Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are stepping right into the shadows, into a world where being self-aware is actually a curse, and where just existing is the ultimate horror story. You know, if you've ever found yourself totally haunted by Russ Cole's bleak, dark monologues in the first season of True Detective, then you've actually already had a little peek into the abyss we're about to dive into. But have you ever wondered where all that terrifying philosophy, where it really came from? Yeah, that chilling line about consciousness, it wasn't just cooked up for the show. Nope. That, and a whole lot of Cole's worldview, was lifted almost word for word from one of the most reclusive and honestly profound masters of modern horror. In fact, the show's creator, Nick Pizzolatto, even called this author's work incredibly powerful. And today, we're going to find out exactly why. So today, we're pulling back the curtain on the man behind that nightmare himself, Thomas Ligotti. Think of this as your personal beginner's guide, a way to step into his surreal and, believe me, deeply unsettling world. Okay, let's get into it. To really get Ligotti, you can't just dive headfirst into his stories. It doesn't quite work that way. First, you've got to understand the terrifying philosophy that is the engine behind absolutely everything he writes. So, at the very heart of Ligotti's work is this really unsettling idea called philosophical pessimism. And what is that? Well, think of it like this. It's the worldview that suffering in life is always going to outweigh any pleasure we might find. And to be brutally honest, it would have been better if we'd never been born in the first place. Yeah, it's dark. He's not inventing this from scratch, though. He's building on a tradition from thinkers like Schopenhauer, and this is a key one, a Norwegian philosopher named Peter Wessels-Zapp. And then in his non-fiction book, his manifesto really, The Conspiracy Against the Human Race, Ligotti just drops the hammer. He flat out argues the human consciousness was a massive evolutionary mistake, that our self-awareness, it's a curse, and he comes up with this absolutely terrifying phrase for it, malignantly useless. That's his way of describing a world that isn't just meaningless, but is like actively and hostilely pointless. Wow. So, what's the big takeaway here? It's this. For Ligotti, just being alive is a trap. We're basically puppets who are tragically, painfully aware that we have strings, but we have absolutely zero control over them. And you know all those things we chase after to feel like life has meaning? Love, success, religion, all of it? In his view, they're just elaborate games we play to distract ourselves from the horrifying truth that there is no meaning to find. Period. All right, so that's the philosophy. And yeah, it is super grim. But the really cool part is, how does all that turn into actual stories? Let's take a look at how Ligotti manages to spin these abstract fears into pure nightmares on the page. And this, right here, is where it gets so fascinating. You can literally see how his philosophy becomes his fiction. That whole idea of us being puppets? Well, he makes it completely literal. His stories are just filled with these creepy mannequins and dummies. And that feeling of a pointless, soul-crushing mechanical life? He basically invented a whole subgenre you could call corporate horror, where the office cubicle becomes this landscape of pure, unadulterated existential dread. And it's not just what he writes about, it's how he does it. His writing style, it's dense, it's poetic, and honestly, it's way more interested in creating this suffocating atmosphere of dread than it is in giving you a straightforward plot. He doesn't just tell you, hey, this is scary. No, he crafts sentences that crawl under your skin and make you feel that horror deep in your bones. So at this point, you might be thinking, okay, I'm intrigued. Maybe a little terrified, but intrigued. Where do I even start? And that's a great question because Ligotti can be pretty intimidating. So don't worry, I've put together a clear roadmap for you. It's your guide into the abyss, designed so you don't get completely lost. All right, here we go. This reading path is honestly your best bet. You're going to want to start with his early collections, like Songs of a Dead Dreamer or Grimscribe. That's where you'll get a real feel for his unique voice. Now, if you find that a little dense, just hop over to number 2, My Work Is Not Yet Done. It's a novella about corporate revenge, so it has a much more traditional plot, which makes it a fantastic, really accessible entry point. Then, once you're hooked, and you probably will be, you can dive into a mature masterpiece like Teatro Grotesco. And then finally, when you're ready, you tackle the nonfiction, The Conspiracy Against the Human Race. Think of it as the philosophical skeleton key that unlocks everything. Okay, before you head off on your own, just a few final tips for your descent. Seriously, think of this as your survival guide. So first things first, take it slow. This isn't something you just blaze through. His writing is dense, it demands your attention, and this is key. Embrace the atmosphere. You're not reading a mystery, so don't try to solve it. Ambiguity is the whole point. Let it wash over you. His stories are perfect for reading at night, when the world already feels a little off. And please, take breaks. His worldview can get pretty overwhelming, so it's totally okay to read something lighter in between. Just remember, the unease, that feeling, that's the point.
And that's where we have to leave you. Thomas Ligotti doesn't offer any comfort. There are no easy answers here. His work basically suggests that existence itself is a nightmare. And the terrifying part is, we can't wake up. All he offers is this beautifully crafted, deeply philosophical horror that forces every single one of us to look straight into the abyss. So the only real question left is the one right there on your screen. Are you ready to look?